Welcome into 5 Wide Fantasy. Today's video, we're looking at a few sleepers for the second half of the fantasy football season. These are guys, I wanted to touch on the waiver wire for week 8 or for week 9, but honestly, not a lot of players that I would consider adding this week. So these players are actually all below 50% rostered, and I think will have a significant impact on the finish to the fantasy season, especially in the playoffs. So be sure you're paying attention to these 4 players I have for you. But before we get to it, Betfred, our friends at Betfred have an awesome giveaway for us. You'll be entered to win a pair of sweet tickets to their game, the Bengals game next week against the Panthers. All you have to do, if you're in the state of Ohio, the link to pre-register is down below. Online sports betting is legal in the state of Ohio on January 1st. So you can pre-register at Betfred, claim their Bet50, Get 250 promo. Also another $20 free bet from them and a number of other giveaways they have for January 1. When sports betting is legal in the state of Ohio. So go check that out. Link is down below in the description. Let's get to these players. The first guy, not a great person, but this is football, so I do have to talk about it, and I do think he has a significant impact to the fantasy playoffs. It's DeSean Watson, man. DeSean Watson returns from suspension in Week 12 against the Texans, and of course, that is a nice game to be able to play DeSean Watson in. And I think people are forgetting how good this guy was in 2020, which was the last time he was playing football. He's one of the best deep ball passers in the NFL. On passes of 20-plus yards, he was 4th in completions, 3rd in completion percentage. He led the NFL in yards per attempt. He led the NFL in completion percentage. Talk about a guy who is a deep ball passer who also led the NFL in completion percentage. Over 70% of his passes he completed. He was 4th in average depth of target. This is a player who is not only efficient as a passer, he's also able to chase deep plays and hit those deep plays. This is the perfect fantasy quarterback who, in my mind, when he was on the field in 2020, he was a top 3 quarterback in the league. And this is a chance for you to be able to add him. Right now, he's like 21% rostered. I'm surprised to see that number at Yahoo, but it could be higher for you. He could be taken in your league. But I think as someone, if you're in a good spot, if you're 6-2, let's say, through 8 weeks, this is the perfect player to go acquire. Because some of the best quarterbacks in fantasy for the season, the guys that you drafted at the beginning part of the year, have really tough schedules in the playoffs. This remaining schedule for DeSean Watson, once he's back, is really good. He goes Houston, like I mentioned. Cincinnati is up next, which is a tough matchup, 5th in fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. But the playoff schedule for him is one of the best of any quarterback in the NFL. Baltimore Ravens, who are 25th in fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. The New Orleans Saints, who are 22nd, and closes out the fantasy championship against the Washington Commanders. This team, if they continue to kind of stay above water, are going to be a team that might be competing and playing for something late in the season. I do think they, by that point, if Watson is back, they could contend in the AFC North and for a wildcard spot. But man, this is a great schedule for him. And not only was he a fantastic deep ball passer in the previous years in Houston, he now gets to play behind the best pass blocking offensive line in the NFL. We're combining a fantastic deep ball passer with a fantastic offensive line, and that is a match made in heaven for the Browns and for fantasy managers. So go add him if he's available. If he's not available, go make a trade as long as you're in a good spot to be able to make the playoffs. Because all this is about is making the playoffs. Once you get there, anything can happen. This is a guy that can win it for you. So go get DeSean Watson if you can. Next up, you got to talk about his teammate, right? That's the other way that we can attack this guy if you do not have the ability to add him through the wire, or the person that you're working with doesn't want to trade him away. Donovan PeoplesJones. Donovan PeoplesJones, in my mind, is the perfect late season sleeper who's I think he's like 24% rostered right now, that is in a perfect spot here once DeSean Watson comes back to be able to have significant fantasy production. But even without him, with Jacoby Brissett, he's actually been pretty good the last 4 weeks or so. Yeah, 4 straight weeks he's posted 50-plus yards and 4+ receptions. I'm recording this before the Bengals game on Monday night, but this is the perfect ad here in the mind of he runs about 72% of his routes from out wide. And if you look at the past history with the Texans for DeSean Watson, the 2 guys that were able to contribute from a fantasy perspective the most were Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks, both of which ran outside. DeSean Watson doesn't have much of a history with slot wide receivers. So, could this be David Bell as the guy to target? I'm not so sure. PeoplesJones has looked good, and he sees a higher average depth of target than Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs, DeAndre Hopkins. So This is a player that in previous years with Baker, he was the go-to deep ball guy, but this is a much better deep ball passing quarterback he'll get to work with late in the season. And he had a burst score in the 100th percentile, according to Player Profiler. So he's a deep ball threat, a guy on the outside who is getting better in those intermediate areas too. We've really seen that this year with Jacoby Brissett. He's been much better there, something that was missing in his game. But once DeSean Watson's there, this is a player that for most people will be an easy free ad that you can kind of stash on your bench. And this week to me is the perfect week to do something like that. So where you can, definitely go look to add Donovan PeoplesJones, or if you need to, make a little trade without giving too much up to acquire him. All right. Third guy here, another quarterback. I'm really looking at quarterback, as I mentioned earlier, as a spot to be able to help you win your fantasy league in the second half. Go look at your current quarterback. They probably have a tough schedule. The only one I know for sure doesn't is Lamar Jackson. His is very good. But a lot of these, like Joe Burrow's is tough. I know that for sure. I'm pretty sure, Josh Allen's a matchup-proof guy, but even Patrick Mahomes, I think, doesn't have the easiest fantasy schedule late in the season. So Justin Fields is someone who's below 50%, I believe he's 41% rostered, and his last 6 weeks are very, very encouraging. You look at these last 6 weeks, that's skyrocketed now to the quarterback 11 on the season. He was the quarterback 3 this past week in week 8 against the Cowboys, and it's on the backs of rushing volume. These players are rare to find, especially on the wire, but when you do, you need to make sure you snatch these guys up. I am a massive proponent. I'll get messages from friends, from people in our Discord of, who should I drop for this guy? Anytime I see someone with 2 quarterbacks on their team, I'm like, you do not drop the second quarterback. Drop the second quarterback. You don't need them. Right now, we're talking about guys you can stash that really have high value. But if I see you with Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr as your 2 quarterbacks, you should not have 2 of them on your roster. There's no need to have 2 quarterbacks in a 1-quarterback league. There's plenty of great options to stream on the wire. The only guys I'm stashing are guys with top 5 type of upside. Justin Fields and DeSean Watson are those players. Right now, Fields is emerging into that top 5 type upside. He didn't have it early in the season, but it's because he's averaging 9.5 rushing attempts and 62 rushing yards his last 6 games. He's finally being used not just as a create rushing yards when the pass play breaks down. He's being given designed looks. He's rushing inside the red zone. He's finding ways to score on the ground and now being a little bit better and more efficient through the air. I love Justin Fields as the player that you can play right now and then stash DeSean Watson for when he's back, because the next 5 weeks for Justin Fields are great. This week coming up, the Dolphins, who are great against the run, but do struggle against the pass. Then he's got Detroit, who just struggle in general defensively. The Falcons, same goes there. The Jets, who could be a tighter matchup for them. Definitely not one I'm looking to see Justin Fields throw the ball too much in. But then right before the bye, they go Green Bay, who are terrible against the run. So I think Justin Fields is a player that as long as he's running the ball like this and can give me 50 yards on the ground, I'm going to be happy with him each and every week, because 60 yards is basically giving me a running back number, and then I'm chasing some plus upside with him in terms of, can he throw a touchdown or 2? Can he throw for 150 yards? And then can he find the end zone as well on the ground? But Justin Fields is going to be a serviceable guy for the next 5 weeks, bridge you to DeSean Watson. So if you want to make a move at quarterback with someone you have like a Joe Burrow and go to something like this to upgrade at another position, I'd certainly look to do that, because I think this is a really advantageous spot as we speak right now. Last guy up here, let's touch on running back, Rashad White. Rashad White is 30% rostered right now. White is a player, and just the running back position in general does kind of rely on injuries to find these sleepers. So 2 players that I went back and forth on. I didn't want to go 2 players from 4 players and 2 teams. I didn't want to go Khalil Herbert, who I think is another good late season, second half potential league winner. But the Bears schedule is really tough at the end of the year. They go Eagles, Bills in the quarterfinal and semifinal of the playoffs. So a pivot here to Rashad White. And a lot of it comes down to, I know this Buccaneers offensive line has been terrible. They can't run the ball. They have the highest stuff rate in the NFL. But I do think there's a chance they give Rashad White, who's been given a little bit more opportunity, more in the receiving game, but Fournette's still out-snapping him significantly. But man, that could change, because Leonard Fournette is 87th among running backs in EPA per rush, and he's dead last in points above average, 110th amongst running backs. That includes every back in the league. I'm talking Isaiah Spiller, who I believe has 1 carry for -5 yards. He is included in this list of guys. So he's averaging 3.4 yards per carry. Fournette just can't move the ball on the ground. And I think Rashad White is pretty much just as capable of a pass catcher as Fournette is. So if anything happens to Fournette, obviously we're going to get even bigger upside with White here. But regardless, he's working his way into the rotation. His role is growing. I think there's no reason why you shouldn't have this guy stashed on your bench right now as a running back. You know, we're always looking for a running back that can emerge, and he's one that could potentially do so. 1.37 yards per route run, which is 17th at the position. Very, very serviceable when he's on the field, running a route. It seems like he's being looked to quite a bit. And of course, with the offensive line the way it is, Brady just doesn't have a lot of time to be able to look downfield. So White is a popular option for him. But if you look at the remaining schedule, also not too bad. We're looking at the Rams next week, who are a tough matchup against the run, but Seattle, and then they have the bye week. So the bye week could be a chance for them to change the way they approach this backfield if things continue to struggle. And fresh off that bye is the Cleveland Browns, who are the league's worst against the run. Then they go New Orleans, San Francisco, and the playoffs are Cincinnati, Arizona, and Carolina. So Arizona, Carolina is a nice way to finish. So at the very least, a great stash here in case of anything happens in terms of injury, but his role could continue to grow as the season goes on, and perhaps Tampa Bay finds some ways to be a little bit more efficient on offense, and Rashad White can be the beneficiary. So those are the 4 players that I think are second half sleepers that are below 50% rostered and likely available. If not available, easy to add for the cheap guys for the second half. So make sure you go look to add these players where you can. If you guys have any players you're looking to drop or any decisions you're looking to make in terms of a trade, drop it down below in the comments. If you guys enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel, like the video as well, would really appreciate it. And go check out our friends over at Betfred. Again, that link is down below in the description. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.